Hi, and welcome to Post Social. My name is Oliver, and in today's podcast, we talk to Paddy Wilkins and his involvement with community sports. We discuss his role at the London Youth Rowing Club and how he encourages young people to take an interest in rowing. Before we start, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out the description for our Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn pages. Okay, so thank you, Paddy, for doing this interview today. How are you?
No, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I'm doing very well, thanks. Looking forward to it.
Thank you. So just give a quick summary of yourself, like what you do, what your work is.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Paddy, and I used to be a journalist at Social Sports. I was also, this is whilst I was at University of East London. Whilst I was up there, I was also working as a rowing coach for London Youth Rowing.
So you worked for Post Social as a sports journalist, my position myself. One question I had in mind, during your first week, how did you adapt to like this sort of role? Have you done anything like that before, or was it a new experience for you?
Yeah, of course. So for my first week, it was there was a lot of an adjustment period for it, I should say. So I came in and I hadn't really done this type of kind of video journalism or interview work before. I'd done a lot of articles, I'd done a lot of interviews, but I've never done one that would be recorded and then kind of had the whole kind of podcast edited for. So I kind of jumped into it very much kind of, we'll get through the first week, and I knew that there were going to be criticisms. I knew that there were going to be things that I didn't quite get right, and that's exactly what happened. And then especially in the second week, that kind of got a little bit better. And then by kind of week 3, week 4, fully into it, starting to just knock out the interviews quite well. And yeah, really just pushing forward. But it was quite an adjustment period, I would definitely have to say.
I heard you've interviewed quite a few big names as well within football, for one. Could you tell a bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I was lucky enough to manage to get in contact with the one of the coaches of the Leicester Lions basketball team. That was quite impressive. And then obviously you mentioned football as well. I was lucky enough to get in contact with Bailey Wright. Quite a big footballer in plays for Sunderland. Didn't actually realise that he was an East London student as well. So it was quite kind of easy to get that link to him, and then managed to get a really good interview out of it. It was a really rewarding experience, and it actually taught me a lot as a journalist about kind of having a high profile client and actually kind of being able to do these proper questions. And I was doing it anyway, but it was a good kind of chance to look into the research side of things and kind of go, okay, you know, this is his Wikipedia, this is his time playing for this club and this club. What can I ask him about that? What can I kind of go back and just kind of show him that I've done the research and that I've put the effort in as well. So that was a really rewarding experience.
It sounds it, yeah. You talk about being an East London student. What was your course that you did?
So my course was sports journalism. It was a really fun course, actually. I did enjoy the whole thing. Especially second and third year, when you got to kind of pick and choose what sports you wanted to write about. So they had kind of what they called patches. So you would choose your patch, so to speak, and that would be your area of writing. And there were a lot of kind of oversubscribed ones. So there was a lot of people writing about football and all the East London sports. So West Ham and Millwall would kind of come into that bracket, as well as Charlton, Leyton Orient as well. But I never really had that much of an interest in being a football reporter. So I got kind of a lot of free reign over sailing articles, kayaking articles, rowing articles as well. And it was a really interesting course to kind of say, this is what we're going to teach you. But a lot of it is you go out there, make the contacts. And I remember there was one interview that I did with, I fell into it completely by accident. It was an underwater hockey club. And I went there and I did some footage and I produced a video on it for the Rising East, which was the uni's newspaper. Did an article on that, and it was such a fun evening. I forgot that I was there on kind of work basis. I really enjoyed it. It was really interesting.
Coming away from journalism, you mentioned rowing. Would you say that's your main sport, your main focus?
I would definitely say so, yeah. Rowing has always been quite a passion of mine since I was younger. And I think from there it just kind of developed. I got involved, like I said, with London Youth Rowing whilst I was at uni, and that just opened a lot of doors for me that I wouldn't have really had a chance to do elsewhere.
So what was the kind of role you did at London Youth Rowing?
So I was one of their session coaches. So we would have a lot of school groups would come in, and they would come in, and rowing was on their kind of curriculum for PE. And it was really rewarding. It was just giving a bunch of kids that wouldn't usually get the chance, because obviously they come from an East London background, and rowing is still seen as quite prestigious, quite upper class, and very keen to kind of remove the stigma from that. So they would come in, and it was great to be able to kind of show them the ropes and give them, this 6-week course of how, and we got them out on the water, we got them in the boats. And it was all done very safely. There was always a safety launch on by. There were always kind of multiple coaches on the dock. We were in the boats with them. And it was just giving them a chance to do something that they would never, or they, quite possibly wouldn't get the opportunity to do, and possibly open some doors for them that I've had open for me in the past. So it was really fun.
You also did a bit of scouting as well for the club itself, if I'm right.
Yeah. So I, when I was kind of back at home in Southampton, I started off in the Sea Scouts from quite a young age. That's what got me involved in rowing as well. I was quite a big kid at the time, and came down, and the leader kind of looked at me and, "Oh, you're a bit of a big guy." And I went, "Yeah, I know." And he goes, "Well, get in the boat." And it all just kind of went in from there. Found a great group of people. I keep talking about opening doors, but the Scouting Association really did. It got me into kind of rowing and kayaking. It got me doing things, and that's kind of been where my career path has been ever since. But then when I became 18, I was working kind of as volunteering as a leader for them. So it was just kind of helping the younger guys the same way that the older guys helped me when I was younger.
Right. So you talk about being as a session coach. You'd work with young people, children, and that. How would you encourage them to have an interest in rowing?
We would kind of tell them that it's not. With rowing, there's a lot that, I mean, like with any sport, really, there's a lot of kind of more complicated parts that you don't see from the outside until you do it. And as a young person, it's very easy to get overwhelmed with every single point. So we try to break it down really easily and kind of keep it extremely simple into kind of the basic steps, and then kind of progress from there. But we always kind of told them, don't feel overwhelmed by it. Don't kind of go, "Oh, I've tried it once and I'm absolutely terrible." And it's always important to kind of think about when I was younger and when I started, I was, terrible at it. And I had a lot of people telling me, don't overthink it. And that's probably the biggest takeaway that we would give the kids as well.
Right. Okay. I myself, I've never actually done any sort of rowing. It may be from where I'm from, but there's not a lot of like clubs around to do with it. Were you ever involved in like community clubs of any sport, really, but in particular rowing?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was in East London and doing the community coaching, we would have occasionally disability groups would come down, and it would just be people getting them out on the water, and they loved it. It was so rewarding for pretty much everyone involved. And it was just so interesting to be able to kind of hear their stories and hear how they kind of ended up in East London, how they ended up where they are today, whilst getting them on the water and just helping them out, really.
Oh, very interesting. I think that's all the questions I have today.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for doing this.